You know, for the last 400 years, musicians and inventors have been totally obsessed with keyboards. They've been on this constant search for new ways to get the music in their heads out into the world. It's this incredible story of ingenuity that takes us from, like, the royal courts of the Renaissance all the way to the digital studios we have today.
I mean, just think about that for a second. How on earth did we start with something so physical, so wonderfully simple, basically a bird's feather plucking a metal string, and somehow end up here with an invisible universal protocol, a stream of ones and zeros that can literally command any sound you can possibly imagine? Well, that's the wild story we're going to unpack right now.
All right, so our story really begins back in the Baroque era with the undisputed king of the keyboard, the harpsichord. I like to call this period the elegant cage because, for all of its incredible beauty and sophistication, it had this one very specific, unbreakable limit. And what's so cool is how simple the mechanism was. You press a key, and this little wooden piece called a jack shoots up. Attached to it is a plectrum, which was originally made from a bird's quill, and it just plucks the string. That's it. And that single action is what gives the harpsichord its famous, bright, crisp, and totally iconic sound. And don't go thinking this was some crude, primitive instrument. Not at all. Harpsichord making was a really high art form, and it was flourishing all across Europe. You had these light, clear-sounding instruments from the Italian school, which were perfect for accompanying singers. And then, on the total opposite end of the spectrum, you had the English school, building these absolute monsters that were described at the time as enormously rich and powerful. But here's the cage. For all that refinement, all that artistry, the harpsichord had one massive limitation. You could not control the volume with your touch. It didn't matter if you caressed a key or slammed your fist on it. The note came out at the exact same volume, every single time. So that one huge limitation, it basically set the stage for one of the most important inventions in the history of music. The problem of soft and loud was about to be solved with a totally different idea. Not a pluck, but a strike. So, around the year 1700, this is what the inventor called his brand new creation, gravicembalo col piano e forte. It literally means harpsichord with soft and loud. The entire revolutionary concept is right there in the name. It's incredible. And this is the man who pulled it off, Bartolomeo Cristofori. Now, the brilliant irony here is that Cristofori was one of the most famous and respected harpsichord makers of his time. He knew that instrument's limits better than anyone, and he became obsessed with breaking out of that elegant cage. Okay, so let's just boil it down to the essential difference, because it's so simple but so profound. Instead of a quill plucking the string, Cristofori invented this amazing mechanism that threw a little hammer to strike it. And that's the magic trick right there. A pluck gives you one volume, but a strike gives you endless possibilities depending on how hard you press the key. So Cristofori lit the spark, right? But it was the 19th century that fanned it into a roaring bonfire. You had these superstar composers like Franz Liszt demanding more and more from the instrument, and you had the Industrial Revolution providing the technology. Piano making basically became this high-stakes technological arms race. Okay, so check out how these innovations just stack on top of each other. In 1821, a Rard invents the double escapement action, which lets players repeat notes incredibly fast. Then, in 1825, an American named Alpheus Babcock creates a full cast-iron frame. This was huge because it meant you could put the strings under insane tension for way more volume. Then you add more durable felt hammers and Steinway's genius overstringing design, and boom, the modern concert grand piano is born. And this comparison just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got Cristofori's beautiful, delicate, all-wood instrument. And on the right, you have the massive, powerful, iron-hearted beast that is a modern Steinway. You can practically hear the difference in power just by looking at them. All right, so for nearly 250 years, the story was all about finding better and better ways to make a string vibrate. But then the 20th century rolls around and a completely new revolution kicks off, one that would change the very definition of a musical instrument. The goal wasn't to just manipulate a string anymore. It was to create sound from the ground up, using nothing but electricity. The pivotal moment really arrives in 1964. An American engineer named Robert Moog shows off his new modular synthesizer, and the world of music was about to be flipped completely upside down. So what was Moog's big idea? Well, it was this brilliant concept called voltage control. Instead of using complex mechanical parts, he used different levels of electricity to control every aspect of a sound. You could take these patch cords and physically connect different modules together, one that makes a tone, one that shapes it, one that controls its volume, and literally build a sound from scratch. It was like sonic Legos.
But for most people, this was just weird laboratory equipment, you know? It wasn't really considered a musical instrument until this album. Wendy Carlos's Switched On Bach was an absolute phenomenon. It proved that this new technology could create incredibly complex, beautiful, and expressive music. It wasn't just some novelty act. It was the moment the synthesizer became legit to the entire world.
So now you have this absolute explosion of new electronic instruments from all these different companies, which, of course, created a brand new problem. It was like a digital Tower of Babel. None of these incredible new synthesizers could talk to each other. Just imagine this for a second. You buy a really cool keyboard from Yamaha, but it can only trigger sounds from that Yamaha synth. If you fell in love with the sound from a Roland synth, well, you were just out of luck. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a total creative straitjacket that locked musicians into these little walled gardens of sound. The solution finally came from an engineer named Dave Smith. He proposed a universal standard so all these instruments could finally communicate. And after this totally unprecedented collaboration between rival companies, MIDI was officially published in 1983. This was a game changer because it separated the keyboard you were playing from the device that was making the sound. You could now play one keyboard and trigger an entire room full of synthesizers from any company you wanted. Now, here is the single most misunderstood thing about MIDI. It does not send any sound, none at all. All it does is send performance instructions, data like turn note C4 on, play it at this velocity, and then turn note C4 off. The best analogy is a player piano roll. MIDI is just the paper with the holes punched in it. It's the sheet music, not the orchestra itself. And so here we are at the end of this incredible 400-year journey. We started with a physical quill, plucking a string, which evolved into a mechanical hammer striking it, and ended up with a weightless, invisible digital protocol that just carries the idea of the music. What an amazing ride, right? From the totally physical to the purely abstract. And it leaves us with this one massive, really exciting question that connects this whole history to whatever comes next. After all this incredible innovation, what could the next step possibly sound like?